Elder Nolith stood before the great viewing screen in the council hall. His old hands were shaking. The screen showed a simple message from the Galactic Assembly. It was only 3 lines long, but those 3 lines meant death for his entire world. The Assembly has voted, the message said. 47 nations voted to withdraw. 3 voted to stay. Vareth is no longer under Assembly protection. May your spirits find peace. May your spirits find peace. That was what you said to the dying. Nolith turned to look at his advisors. The Mirathi were a gentle people. They had large dark eyes and soft gray skin. Their hands were made for healing and farming, not for fighting. In 10,000 years of history, they had never started a war. They had never needed weapons. The galaxy had always protected them because they provided medicine and food to dozens of worlds. But now the Kethrani swarm was coming, and the galaxy had decided that Varoth was not worth saving. "How long?" asked Advisor Peleth. Her voice was barely a whisper. 3 days, said Nolith. Perhaps 4. The swarm moved fast when they smell weakness. And our allies? Nolith almost laughed at that word. Allies. The Tavani had been their partners for 600 years. Yesterday, they sent a message saying they were closing their borders. The Krellish Confederation, who ate Mirathi grain every day, said they could not risk their ships. The great powers of the Assembly sent their regrets and their prayers. Prayers did not stop the swarm. There will be no help, said Nolith. We must accept this truth. We will die, but we will die with dignity. That night, Nolith walked through the streets of the capital city. He watched his people going about their lives. Children played in the gardens. Merchants sold fruit in the markets. Most of them did not know yet. When morning came, he would have to tell them. He would have to explain that the galaxy had looked at them and decided they were not worth saving. He was standing in the central plaza when his communication device made a sound. It was Peleth, and her voice was strange. Elder, there is a ship in orbit. What kind of ship? Unknown design. We have never seen anything like it. They are requesting landing coordinates. The swarm? No, the ship is... It has strange markings. They look like words, but not in any language we know. Wait, there was a long pause. Elder, they are sending a translated message. They say they are humans. Nolith frowned. He had heard of humans. They were a young species from a small planet far away. They had only joined the galactic community a few hundred years ago. They were not powerful. They were not wealthy. Why would they come now, when everyone else was leaving? Let them land, said Nolith. At this point, what do we have to lose? The human ship touched down in the main spaceport an hour later. It was a military vessel, but it was old and worn. The paint was scratched. There were marks from old battles on its hull. The name on the side said, Steadfast. The door opened, and Nolith saw humans for the first time. They were strange creatures. They stood on 2 legs like Mirathi, but their bodies were thick and solid. Their eyes were small and forward-facing, like predators. When they walked down the ramp, they moved with a confidence that seemed almost dangerous. The leader was a female with black hair tied behind her head. She wore a uniform that had seen much use. When she stopped in front of Nolith, she did something unexpected. She bowed her head in respect. I am Commander Una Park, she said. Her voice was clear and calm. This is Lieutenant Taiho Shin, my second officer. We have come from Earth. Why? Asked Nolith. It was the only question that mattered. Commander Park looked at him. Her small human eyes were steady and warm. We heard that the Assembly abandoned you. We heard that the swarm is coming. We came to help. Help? Nolith did not understand. How? Your people have no treaty with us. You gain nothing from protecting Vareth. The Assembly has already declared that they will punish anyone who interferes. Lieutenant Shin stepped forward. He was a tall man with a serious face. "Elder, we know all of this. We came anyway. But why? Why would you risk your people for strangers?" Commander Park smiled. It was a strange expression on her alien face, but somehow it made Nalith feel less afraid. "Because you needed help," she said. "And someone should give it." Nalith stared at her. In all his long years, he had learned one truth about the galaxy. No one did anything without a reason. No one helped others unless they expected something in return. Trade, resources, political advantage. That was how the galaxy worked. But this human was looking at him like that truth meant nothing to her. "I do not understand your people," said Nalith. "Most species don't," said Lieutenant Shin. "Not at first." "Commander." Park reached out and put her hand on Nalith's shoulder. Her grip was gentle but firm. "Elder, I won't lie to you. We are one ship. We have 50 soldiers and limited supplies. We cannot defeat the swarm alone. But I have already sent a message to my people. Others are coming. Volunteers. People who believe that no one should die alone and forgotten. How many? I don't know yet. But they will come. Humans are strange that way. When we hear about someone in trouble, some of us cannot look away. We have to do something, even if it means dying." She paused. "Your people matter. Your lives matter. And as long as we have breath in our bodies, we will stand with you." Nalith felt something he had not felt since the Assembly's vote. Hope. It was small and fragile, but it was there. "Commander Park, I must warn you. The swarm shows no mercy. They will kill everyone. Your soldiers, my people, everyone. If you stay, you may die." "I know," said Park. "We all know. We came anyway." At that moment, Advisor Pella's voice came through the communication device. She sounded frightened. "Elder, long-range sensors have detected movement. The swarm's advance force. They will be here in 3 days." Nalith looked at the human commander. 3 days. Park nodded. Her face became hard, like stone. "Then we have 3 days to get ready. Lieutenant Shin, contact the ship. I want defensive assessments by morning. And keep the communication channel open to Earth. We need every volunteer we can get." "Yes, Commander." Park turned back to Nalith. "Elder, I need to know everything about your world. Geography, population centers, resources. If we are going to survive this, we need to work together. You speak as if we might actually win. I speak as if we are going to fight. Winning or losing comes after. The fighting comes first." She smiled again, and this time Nalith saw something behind it. Something fierce and unbreakable. "Let me tell you something about humans, Elder. We are not the strongest species. We are not the smartest. Our ships are not the fastest, and our weapons are not the best. But we do not quit. We do not surrender. And we do not abandon people who need us." Nalith looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the swarm was coming to destroy everything he loved. But here, on this landing pad, stood a human who had come across the galaxy to help strangers. Maybe, Nalith thought, the galaxy was wrong about many things. Maybe the powerful were not always the ones who mattered. Maybe true strength was found in those who stood up when standing up was hardest. "Very well, Commander Park," said Nalith. "Let us prepare for war." The first volunteer ship arrived 6 hours after Commander Park sent her message. It was a cargo freighter called the Morning Star, and its captain was a retired soldier who had flown across 3 star systems when he heard the news. By the time the sun rose over Varath's capital city, 16 more ships had appeared in orbit. They were not warships. Most of them were old freighters, mining vessels, and transport craft. One was a hospital ship that had seen better days. But every single one was full of humans who had chosen to come. Elder Nolith stood on the roof of the council hall, watching the ships descend through the clouds. He counted them again and again, unable to believe what he was seeing. 17 ships, said Advisor Peleth. She stood beside him, her dark eyes wide with wonder. 17 ships came to help us. And they have no treaty with us. No trade agreements. Nothing. I know, said Nolith. I do not understand it either. Down in the spaceport, the humans were unloading supplies, weapons, medical equipment, food, building materials. They worked quickly and without rest. Nolith had never seen any species work so hard. Commander Park walked up the steps to the council hall. Behind her was a human female in dusty work clothes. The female was carrying tools and what looked like building plans. Elder Nolith, said Park. This is Sergeant G.A. Moon. She is our best combat engineer. She will help your people build defenses. Sergeant Moon bowed her head. She was a short woman with strong arms and a face that looked like it had seen many hard days. Elder, I need to see your city. I need to understand how it is built. We have maybe 2 days to turn this place into a fortress. A fortress? Nolith shook his head. We do not know how to build such things. We have never fought a war. That's okay, said Moon. I will teach you. Throughout the day, Nolith watched the humans work. Sergeant Moon walked through the city with a group of Mirathi engineers. She showed them how to build walls that could stop enemy fire. She taught them where to place barriers and how to create safe paths for civilians to escape. The Mirathi learned quickly, but they were clearly scared. Why do we need to learn this? Asked one young engineer named Salaith. He was barely an adult, with curious eyes and quick hands. We are farmers and healers. We do not fight. Sergeant Moon stopped walking. She looked at Salaith with a serious expression. Because the swarm does not care who you are. They will kill farmers and healers just as easily as soldiers. If you want to protect your people, you need to understand how to survive. But we have you humans now. You will protect us. We will try, said Moon. But we might fail. We might all die. And if that happens, you need to be able to keep fighting without us. She put her hand on Salaith's shoulder. I am not teaching you how to be soldiers. I am teaching you how to survive. There is a difference. In the medical center, another human was causing a small revolution. Dr. Dong Yun Bei was a military physician with gentle hands and a quiet voice. He had come on the hospital ship, and he had immediately started working with the Mirathi healers. Your medical knowledge is amazing, he told them. You understand diseases and treatments that we have never seen, but you do not know how to treat battlefield wounds. Battlefield wounds? Asked the chief healer, an old female named Vorth. We have never had such things. You will soon. Dr. Bei opened a medical case. Inside were strange tools and supplies. Let me show you. When the fighting starts, you will see injuries that look terrible. Burns, broken bones, missing limbs. The natural reaction is to feel horror and freeze. But you cannot freeze. You must act. Every second matters. Vorth looked at the tools. Her old hands were shaking. I have spent my life saving lives through medicine. Now you want me to save lives through war. Yes, said Dr. Bei. War is coming whether we want it or not. The only choice we have is whether we are ready for it. That evening, Lieutenant Taiho Shin gathered a group of Mirathi in the central plaza. Among them was young Saleth, who had followed Sergeant Moon around all day with endless questions. You want to know about humans, said Shin. I can see it in your eyes. You do not understand why we came. That is true, said Saleth. The assembly said we were not worth saving. They voted to leave us to die. But you came. Why? Shin sat down on the steps of a fountain. The Mirathi gathered around him. Above them, the stars were beginning to appear in the darkening sky. "Let me tell you a story," said Shin. 200 years ago, humans joined the Galactic Assembly. We were new. We were weak. We had only a few colonies and a small fleet. The bigger species looked at us and saw nothing important. What happened? War happened. A species called the Varathi attacked our frontier colonies. They wanted our resources and our territory. We asked the Assembly for help. Shin's voice became hard. They voted. Just like they voted for you? And they decided that humans were not worth saving. The Mirathi were silent. They understood this pain. "We fought alone," said Shin. "For 3 years, we fought without help. We lost millions of people. We lost colony after colony. Everyone thought we would be destroyed." He paused. "But we survived. We learned how to fight. We learned how to endure. And when the war was over, we made a promise. We promised that we would never let another species face what we faced. We would never stand by and watch while innocent people were abandoned." "That is why you came," said Saleith. "Because you remember." "Yes, we remember what it felt like to be alone. We remember the fear and the despair. And we remember that no one should have to feel that way." Shin looked up at the stars. "There are humans who disagreed with this mission. They said it was too dangerous. They said we had no obligation to help strangers. But others said that was exactly why we should go. Because helping strangers is what makes us human." At that moment, Commander Park's voice came over the communication system. "All personnel, this is Commander Park. I just received a message from the Galactic Assembly. A diplomat named Torvith is demanding that we leave Vareth immediately. He says humanity will face severe sanctions if we continue our interference." There was a moment of silence. Then Shin stood up. "And what did you tell him, Commander?" Even through the communication system, they could hear Park smile. "I disconnected the call." The Mirathi looked at each other. Saleith started to laugh. It was a nervous laugh at first, but then others joined him. For the first time since the Assembly's vote, the Mirathi felt something other than fear dawn above them. The long-range sensors detected new movement. The swarm's advanced scouts would arrive within hours. The main force was close behind. Commander Park's voice came again. "Everyone, we have limited time. The swarm is almost here. In a few hours, we will face the enemy. I will not lie to you. This will be hard. Some of us will not survive. But I want you to know something. I am proud to stand with you. Every human who came here is proud. And the Mirathi should be proud too. You did not give up. You did not surrender. And as long as we stand together, we have a chance." Elder Nolith walked out onto the balcony of the council hall. He looked at the city below. Humans and Mirathi were working side by side, building walls and preparing weapons. Strangers had become allies in just one day. He thought about what Lieutenant Shin had said. Humans remembered their pain, and they used that memory to help others. They did not forget. Perhaps Nala thought that was the greatest strength of all. "Commander Park," he said into his communicator, "I want to thank you. Not just for coming, but for showing my people that we are not worthless. That our lives matter. They always mattered, Elder. The Assembly just forgot. We are here to remind them." The first explosion lit up the sky just before midnight. The swarm had arrived. The Kethrani swarm fell from the sky like a black rain. Their drop pods crashed into the outer agricultural zones, tearing through fields that had fed 100 worlds. Within minutes, thousands of swarm warriors poured out across the land. Private Yunji Han had never seen combat before. She was 23 years old, and she had only finished her training 6 months ago. When she heard about the mission to Vareth, she had volunteered without thinking. Now, Crouching behind a stone wall with her weapon in her hands, she wondered if she had made a mistake. "Stay calm," said the soldier next to her. His name was Corporal Mensu Jiang, and he had survived 3 campaigns. "The first wave is always the worst. Just breathe and aim." The swarm warriors came into view. They were terrifying. Each one was as tall as a human, with hard black shells and multiple limbs ending in sharp claws. Their eyes were red and empty. They made clicking sounds as they moved, communicating in a language that meant only one thing: death. "Fire!" shouted the squad leader. Yunji pulled her trigger. The weapon kicked against her shoulder. Swarm warriors fell, but more kept coming. They climbed over their dead without stopping. They had no fear. They had no hesitation. They were bred for one purpose: to consume everything in their path. Behind the defensive line, Marathi civilians were running toward the evacuation shelters. Yunji could hear children crying. She could see parents carrying their young ones, their faces full of terror. These people had never known war. They did not understand why this was happening. "Hold the line," shouted Lieutenant Shin. He was moving between positions, directing fire and giving orders. "The civilians need more time." A swarm warrior broke through the wall to Yunji's left. It grabbed a human soldier and threw him aside like he weighed nothing. Yunji turned and fired, hitting the creature 3 times before it fell. But there were more behind it. "Always more. We are losing ground," said Corporal Jiang. "There are too many. Then we fall back slowly," said Shin. "We give ground, but we never break. The civilians come first, always." They retreated through the agricultural zone, fighting for every meter. The sun rose over the battlefield, revealing the full horror of war. Bodies lay everywhere, human and swarm and Marathi. Fires burned in the fields. The air smelled like smoke and death. Yunji found herself near a small village at the edge of the zone. Most of the villagers had already evacuated, but one old Marathi was still there. He was sitting on the porch of his home, watching the battle with calm eyes. "Sir, you need to leave," Yunji shouted. "The swarm is coming." The old Marathi looked at her. His name was Korvath, and he had lived in this village for 90 years. "This is my home," he said. "I was born here. I will not run. If you stay, you will die." "Perhaps." Korvath stood up slowly. He was thin and fragile, but there was strength in his eyes. "But I am old. I have lived a good life. If I must die, I will die looking at my land." A swarm warrior appeared at the edge of the village. Then another. Then a dozen more. Yunji raised her weapon. She knew she could not save herself and the old Marathi. There were too many enemies. But she did not run. She stood between Korvath and the swarm, ready to fight. "Go," said Korvath. "Save yourself." "No," said Yunji. "I came here to protect your people. I will not leave you." The swarm warriors charged. Yunji fired, taking down 2, 3, 4. But they kept coming. One of them slashed her arm, tearing through her armor. She felt pain, but she did not stop. She kept firing until her weapon was empty. Just as the swarm was about to overwhelm her, reinforcements arrived. Sergeant Moon led a squad of soldiers into the village, guns blazing. The swarm warriors fell back, confused by the sudden attack. "Han, are you hurt?" shouted Moon. "My arm," said Yunji, "but I can still fight." "You did good, Private." Moon looked at Korvath. "Sir, we are evacuating this area. Please come with us." Korvath looked at Yunji. The young human was bleeding, but she was still standing. She had risked her life for a stranger. She had chosen to die rather than abandon him. "Why?" Korvath asked. "Why do you do this?" Yunji thought about the question. Her arm hurt. She was tired and scared. But she knew the answer. Because someone should, she said. They evacuated the village and fell back to the next defensive line. Dr. Bay was waiting at the medical station. He took one look at Yoonji's arm and started working immediately. "This is deep," he said. "You were lucky. Another centimeter, and you would have lost the arm." "It doesn't matter," said Yoonji. "Did the civilians make it?" "Most of them. Thanks to soldiers like you." Corvath was sitting nearby, watching the humans work. Marathi healers were helping Dr. Bay, treating wounds and providing medicine. It was strange to see the two species working together so naturally, as if they had known each other for years instead of hours. "Doctor," said Corvath, "I have a question." "Yes?" "Your people came here to die for us. You knew the risks. You knew you might not survive. Why would you do this for strangers?" Dr. Bay paused his work for a moment. He looked at Corvath with tired but kind eyes. "Because that is what good people do," he said. "We see suffering, and we try to stop it. We see fear, and we try to bring courage. We see people who are alone, and we stand with them." He went back to treating Yoonji's wound. "The galaxy told you that you were not worth saving. We are here to prove them wrong." That evening, the humans held a memorial service for their dead. 15 soldiers had fallen in the first battle. Their names were read aloud, and their stories were shared. Lieutenant Shin spoke about each one, remembering their courage and their sacrifice. The Marathi attended the service. They had never seen such a ritual before. In their culture, death was mourned quietly and privately. But the humans mourned together, sharing their grief openly. Elder Nolith stood next to Commander Park. Her face was calm, but he could see the pain in her eyes. These were her people. She had led them here, and some of them had died. "Commander," said Nolith, "I am sorry for your loss." "Thank you, Elder." Park's voice was steady. "They knew the risks. They came anyway. That is what makes them heroes. Will more come? More humans? I hope so. But even if they don't, we will keep fighting. We will hold this line until we cannot hold it anymore." At that moment, a message arrived from orbit. The main swarm fleet had been detected. It was much larger than they had expected. Hundreds of ships. Millions of warriors. The battle they had fought today was just the beginning. Commander Park read the message and nodded slowly. "It seems the real fight is about to begin," she said. "Are you afraid?" Asked Noelith. Park looked at him. For a moment, she did not answer. Then she smiled, and Nolith saw something in her eyes that he had never seen in any other species. It was not just courage. It was something deeper. Something that refused to accept defeat. "I am always afraid," said Park. "But fear does not stop humans. It just makes us more determined." The stars above Vareth burned cold and distant. Somewhere among them, the swarm was coming. But the humans did not retreat. They did not waver. They stood their ground and prepared for what was to come. And the Marathi stood with them. The news spread across the galaxy like fire. On every world, on every station, in every corner of civilized space, people watched the footage from Vareth. They saw human soldiers fighting against impossible numbers. They saw Marathi civilians being carried to safety by strangers who had no obligation to help them. They saw Private Yoonji Han standing alone against a swarm patrol, refusing to abandon an old farmer she had never met. And they saw the dead. 15 humans in the first battle, 23 in the second. Names and faces that had traveled across the stars to die for people who were not their own dot in the great chamber of the Galactic Assembly. Ambassador Sujin Kang stood before the gathered representatives of 100 worlds. She was a small woman with silver hair and sharp eyes. She had been a diplomat for 40 years, and she had never been angrier in her life. "You voted to abandon them," she said. Her voice echoed through the silent chamber. 47 nations voted to let the Mirathi die. You called it a practical decision. You said Varath had no strategic value. You said the swarm was too powerful to fight. She pressed a button, and the great screen behind her lit up with images. Human soldiers carrying wounded Mirathi. A doctor treating burn victims in a field hospital. Commander Una Park standing on the bridge of her damaged ship, still giving orders despite her injuries. "These are my people," said Kang. "These are humans. We have 17 ships and fewer than 2,000 soldiers. The swarm has hundreds of ships and millions of warriors. By your logic, we should have stayed home. We should have let the Mirathi face extinction alone." She paused, letting the silence grow heavy. "But we did not. We went, we fought. And we are still fighting, even as I speak to you now." Her voice became harder. "We went because it was right. We went because someone had to. And we went because we remember what it feels like to be abandoned." A voice spoke from the assembly seats. It was Speaker Torvith, the politician who had led the vote to abandon Vareth. He was a tall, thin being with cold eyes. "Ambassador Kang, humanity has violated assembly law by interfering in a sovereign matter. You were warned of the consequences. The sanctions will be severe." "Sanctions?" Kang almost laughed. "You are threatening us with trade restrictions while people die? You are talking about paperwork while children are being carried through war zones?" She shook her head. "Speaker Torvith, you may punish us. You may make our lives difficult. But you cannot make us regret what we have done. And you cannot make us stop. The assembly has spoken. The vote was clear. The vote was cowardice." Kang let the word hang in the air. "You looked at innocent people, and you calculated their value. You measured their worth in resources and strategic position, and you found them lacking. But you forgot something important. And what is that? You forgot that the galaxy is watching." Kang gestured at the screen. "These images are everywhere now. Every citizen of every world has seen what humanity is doing on Vareth. They have seen the contrast between your words and our actions. And they are asking themselves a question. What question? They are asking, who would I want standing beside me when the swarm comes to my world?" Kang smiled coldly. "And I do not think the answer is you, Speaker Torvith." The chamber erupted in noise. Representatives argued and shouted. Some supported Torvith. Others demanded that the assembly reconsider its position. But Kang was no longer listening. She had said what she needed to say. The rest was up to the galaxy. Far from the assembly chambers, in the outer regions of space, something remarkable was happening. Ships were moving toward Vareth. Not assembly ships, but vessels from smaller nations. Species that had watched the footage and felt shame. Species that remembered their own dark times and saw humanity's actions as a mirror. The Valari sent 3 medical frigates. They were a peaceful species, like the Marathi. But they could not stand by and watch any longer. The Korish Republic, which had lost half its population to the swarm 2 centuries ago, sent a squadron of old warships. Their commanders sent a message to Commander Park. "We remember what you did for us during the Korish Plague. Now we stand with you." The Outer Rim Coalition, a loose alliance of small species, gathered what ships they could. Most were outdated. Some were barely armed. But they came. On Vareth, Commander Park received the reports with tears in her eyes. She was lying in a medical bed, her left leg wrapped in bandages. A swarm warrior had nearly killed her in the last assault. Lieutenant Shin had taken command, but she refused to be evacuated. "How many?" she asked. 37 ships so far," said Shin. "More are coming." The assembly is furious, but they cannot stop everyone. The assembly can go to hell. Park tried to sit up, wincing at the pain. "What about the swarm? What is their status?" "The main fleet will arrive tomorrow." The Swarm Queen herself is leading the attack. They know we are here, and they are angry. They expected no resistance. Good. Let them be angry. Angry enemies make mistakes. Outside the medical center, the world was changing. Elder Nolith walked through the city, watching his people prepare for battle. They were no longer just civilians waiting to die. They had been trained by humans. They had learned to fight. And now, for the first time in Mirithi history, they were taking up weapons. Nolith found a group of Mirithi volunteers practicing with human rifles. Among them was young Salaith, who had become a kind of liaison between the two species. "Elder," said Salaith, "I never thought I would hold a weapon. Our people have always believed that violence was wrong." "And do you still believe that?" Salaith looked at his rifle. "I believe that allowing evil to win is worse. The humans taught me that. They taught me that peace is a gift, but gifts must sometimes be defended." Nolith nodded slowly. "You have grown wise, young one. I have had good teachers." Salaith looked toward the medical center. "Commander Park almost died for us. So many humans have died for us. I will not let their sacrifice be wasted." That night, the Mirithi Council met for what might be the last time. Nolith stood before them, his old body tired but his spirit strong. "Tomorrow, the Swarm Queen arrives," he said. "Tomorrow we face the full might of an enemy that has destroyed countless worlds. The humans and their allies are outnumbered. By all logic, we should not survive." The council was silent. "But I have learned something from the humans," Nolith continued. "I have learned that logic is not everything. I have learned that courage and determination can overcome terrible odds. I have learned that standing together, even in the face of death, is worth more than surviving alone." He looked at each council member. "I am not going to hide in a shelter while others fight for our home. I am going to stand with them. If I die, I will die fighting. And I ask each of you to make the same choice." One by one, the council members stood. They were old and young, male and female. None of them were warriors, but all of them had decided. "We stand with the humans," said Advisor Peleth. "We stand together." When morning came, the sky above Vareth filled with ships. The Swarm Queen's fleet was massive, blocking out the stars. Hundreds of vessels, each one carrying thousands of warriors. It was the largest swarm fleet ever assembled. But it was not alone. Human ships formed a defensive line above the planet. Beside them were Valari medical frigates, Korish warships, and dozens of vessels from the Outer Rim. It was a strange fleet, made up of species that had never fought together before. But they stood as one. Commander Park's voice came over the communication channel. She was on her feet, despite her injuries, commanding from the bridge of the Steadfast. "All forces, this is Commander Park. The enemy is here. They are stronger than us. They have more ships, more soldiers, more firepower. But they do not have what we have." She paused. "They do not have the courage to fight for what is right. They do not have the heart to stand for strangers. They do not have the unity that we have found in this darkest hour." The fleet waited, weapons ready. Today, we show the galaxy what happens when good people refuse to look away. Today, we fight not just for Vareth, but for every world that has ever been abandoned. Today, we prove that compassion is not weakness. The Swarm Queen's flagship moved forward. The final battle was about to begin. "All ships," said Park, "engage the enemy. And may we be remembered for what we did here, not just how we died." The fleet surged forward and the sky exploded into fire. The battle above Vareth was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Swarm fleet attacked with overwhelming force, expecting a quick victory. Their ships numbered in the hundreds. Their queen, a massive high vessel as large as a small moon, commanded from the center of their formation. For centuries, the Swarm had conquered world after world with this strategy. No one had ever stopped them, but today was different. The human fleet held the line. Commander Park directed the battle from the bridge of the Steadfast, her voice calm despite the chaos. She was standing on one leg, leaning against a console because she refused to sit down. Her officers had begged her to rest. She had told them she would rest when the battle was over. "Concentrate fire on the escort ships," she ordered. "We need to create a path to the Queen." The Korish warships, old but powerful, led the assault. Their crews had been fighting the swarm for generations, and they knew every weakness in the enemy's armor. Valari medical frigates stayed behind the line, rescuing damaged ships and treating the wounded. On the ground, the fighting was just as fierce. The swarm had landed thousands of warriors in a final attempt to take the capital city. Human soldiers and Mirathi volunteers fought side by side, defending every street and every building. Lieutenant Taiho Shin led a squad through the Eastern District. He had been fighting for 2 days without rest. His armor was cracked, his ammunition was low, and 2 of his soldiers were wounded. But he kept moving forward. "We need to reach the central plaza," he said. "The swarm is trying to cut off the civilian shelters." Private Yoonji Han was beside him, her arm still bandaged from her earlier wound. She had refused to stay in the medical center. "Lieutenant, there are too many of them. We cannot break through. Then we find another way." Shin looked at the buildings around them. "There, that building has a second-floor walkway. We can get above them." They climbed through the building, past empty rooms where Marathi families had lived just days ago. On the second floor, they found a walkway that crossed the street. Below them, a swarm patrol was moving toward the plaza. "Wait for my signal," said Shin, then hit them hard. They waited until the patrol was directly below. Then Shin gave the order, and his squad opened fire. The swarm warriors fell before they knew what was happening. By the time reinforcements arrived, Shin's squad had already moved on dot in the central plaza. Elder Nolith stood with a group of Mirathi fighters. He had never held a weapon before this week. Now, at his age, he was defending his home with a human rifle in his hands. "Elder, you should be in the shelter," said young Salaith. "The shelter is for the young and the helpless," said Nolith. "I am old, but I am not helpless." Not anymore. A wave of swarm warriors charged across the plaza. The Mirathi fired, their aim improving with every battle. They were no longer the peaceful people they had been. They had become something new, something harder done above the planet. The tide of battle began to turn. The combined fleet had destroyed dozens of swarm ships, creating a gap in the enemy formation. Through that gap, a small strike force was moving toward the Queen's flagship. Commander Park had insisted on leading the attack herself. The Steadfast was old and damaged, but it was still fighting. Beside her were 5 other ships, a mix of human and allied vessels. "We only get one shot at this," she said over the communication channel. "The Queen controls the swarm. If we destroy her flagship, the warriors will become confused. They will lose their coordination. And if we fail?" asked the captain of a Korish destroyer. "Then we die trying." Park smiled grimly. "But we do not fail. Not today." The strike force broke through the enemy line and raced toward the Queen's flagship. Swarm interceptors tried to stop them, but the Allied ships provided cover fire. One by one, the escort vessels were destroyed. The path was clear. "All weapons, target the flagship's central core," ordered Park. "Fire everything we have." The Steadfast guns blazed, joined by the weapons of every ship in the strike force. The Queen's flagship was massive, with shields that had never been broken. But the combined fire of the desperate fleet was too much. The shields flickered. Then they failed. "Now," shouted Park. "Hit them now." A final barrage struck the flagship's core. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a chain of explosions rippled across the massive vessel. The Queen's flagship broke apart, consumed by fire from within. Across the battlefield, the effect was immediate. The swarm warriors on the ground stopped moving. Their coordination failed. Without the Queen's guidance, they became confused and disorganized. The Allied forces pushed forward, driving the swarm back. On the ground, Mirathi and human soldiers reclaimed the city street by street. In orbit, the remaining swarm ships began to retreat. Fleeing into deep space, the Battle of Varath was over. Commander Park collapsed on the bridge of the Steadfast. Her officers rushed to help her, but she waved them away. "Status report," she said. "How many did we lose?" Lieutenant Shin's voice came over the communication channel from the surface. "Heavy casualties, Commander. But the civilians are safe. The swarm is retreating." "We won." Park closed her eyes. Tears ran down her face. "We won," she whispered. "We actually won." 3 days later, the survivors gathered in the central plaza of the capital city. Humans, Marathi, Korish, Velari, and a dozen other species stood together under the open sky. The battle was over, but the work of healing had just begun. Elder Nalith stood on the steps of the council hall, looking out at the crowd. He had never imagined he would see such a thing. His people, standing beside aliens who had become friends. Warriors who had become brothers. Commander Park stood beside him. Her leg was still injured, and she used a cane to walk. But she was alive. They were all alive. "Commander," said Nalith, "my people owe you a debt we can never repay. You saved us when no one else would. You fought for us when the galaxy said we were worthless." He paused. "What can we give you in return? What do you want from us?" Park looked at him. Her eyes were tired but warm. "I do not want anything, Elder." "Nothing? After all you have done? After all your people have sacrificed?" "Nothing." Park put her hand on Nalath's shoulder. "We did not come here for reward. We came because it was right. But if you truly want to honor our dead, then remember this day. Remember what happened here. And when the next world is abandoned, when the next species faces extinction alone, do not look away. Stand up. Fight. Be the help that you needed when no one was there." Nalith nodded slowly. "We will remember. And we will honor your example." In the weeks that followed, the galaxy changed. The Galactic Assembly formally censured humanity for its intervention, but the punishment was meaningless. Public opinion had shifted. Species that had once ignored humanity now looked at them with new eyes. A new alliance was formed. It was called the Coalition of Vareth, and it included every species that had fought in the battle. Humans, Mirathi, Korish, Velari, and many others. They pledged to protect each other, to stand together when others looked away. Speaker Torvith resigned from the assembly in disgrace. His vote to abandon Vareth had made him a symbol of everything wrong with galactic politics. New leaders emerged, leaders who believed in action instead of calculation. On Vareth, a memorial was built in the central plaza. It was a simple stone monument, inscribed with the names of every soldier who had died in the battle. At the top was a message in both human and Mirathi script. They came when no one else would. Elder Nalith visited the memorial every day until he died, many years later. He would stand before the stone and remember the humans who had crossed the galaxy to save his people. He would remember Commander Park and Lieutenant Shin in private. Han. He would remember the 17 ships that had arrived when all hope was lost. And he would remember the lesson they had taught him. True strength was not measured in ships or weapons. True strength was found in those who stood up when standing up was hardest. True strength was the courage to help strangers, even when the cost was everything. The humans had shown the galaxy what that looked like, and the galaxy would never forget.